You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
This week, like I said, we are talking to student workers here in the South who are trying to organize a college near you. We're talking to UCW organizer Melanie Barron and student worker Ashley and Haley Czarnek. We're really excited about that. We have talked to student workers in the past. The most recently, we talked to the New York University Grad Student Union about their fantastic contract that they just won after a strike there in New York. And so, we're really excited to talk to folks here in the South about what they are up to. Melanie, Kyle, Haley, thank y'all so much for jumping on the line with us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So let's go. We'll just go around the room, so to speak, and have everybody introduce themselves. Kyle, you're a student worker. Can you talk to us about what it is that you do on the campus? And Kyle, you and Haley both are at UA, right, in Tuscaloosa?
That's correct.
Yeah. So, what kind of work do you do on campus? Because there are a lot of folks, that think student worker, and it's hard for them to kind of conceptualize what exactly a student worker does. So, help us figure out what is it kind of like a day in the life of Kyle? What kind of stuff do you do for the campus?
Well, I guess it depends on what time or I've been working. I've had multiple jobs on campus. The one I work the most is teaching assistant, which is mostly grading quizzes, taking attendance, having office hours, helping students. I've also worked as a what they call ready crew, which is just student workers setting up beds in housing, moving furniture, setting up dorms. So it really depends. There's just a lot of diversity in kind of what kind of jobs we're all working.
Right. And Haley, what about you?
I am about to be in my final year at the law school, and so I actually joined the union as a supporting member around the time of their Safe Return UA campaign last August, because they were the only folks that were really putting out information related to COVID or organizing around it. And then I have just recently gotten hired as a research assistant. So I have worked for the university briefly, but my time with the union started before then.
Awesome. That's really neat. We love to get good people going to law school who are not going to be fighting for the corporations and
There's a few of us.
Yeah. And Melanie, you're a organizer with the UCW. How did you come into this work?
Hey, yeah, I came into it as a grad worker myself. I was a graduate student at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and the first couple of years I worked there, I was a research assistant. I hadn't heard of the union. I was just plugging away. And then when I started my PhD program after getting my master's, I was assigned to be a teaching assistant, and I took a big old pay cut. And I was really frustrated by the lack of training and lack of support that I was given from the university level. It's just very much when you become a TA, it's all right, get on in there, teach a class, you're going to do great. And so when I found out about the union, I was like, oh, duh, I want to be a part of this and I want to organize. And so I got involved as a rank and file member organizing my coworkers into the union in Tennessee. And long story short, we started expanding all across the Southeast, and I had the opportunity to be a part of that. So here I am.
So tell us about, what is the context for organizing at public universities in the South? Because there's some, there are folks that are regular listeners of the show are going to know that there are different contexts that different labor laws apply to. If you're in the private sector, all across the U.S., you've got a consistent labor law. Like you've got this one framework under the National Labor Relations Act, and it's pretty similar all across the country. And then if you're a federal employee, you work for the federal government. There's a different set for labor law, and then every single state and municipality has the authority to create its own set of labor law and create its own context there. So explain to us the context for organizing at a public university in the South.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we often say that we're organizing unions where they really shouldn't exist. There is no clear legal framework. In Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, South Carolina, Virginia, all these states where we have United Campus Workers, Colorado, Arizona. There's so many workers that are not covered by the National Labor Relations Act and the protections there. And there's a lot of states that have no framework for collective bargaining with public sector workers. And so, a lot of people think when we come around, the first question that we often get is like, oh, wait, I thought having a union was illegal. Isn't this a right to work state? And so one of the things I get to tell people at the beginning is like, right to work, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't organize. It just is a term that's meant to scare you. And so what we do is we build organization where no organization exists. And that is our key intervention in making improvements for labor law over time. Is if we're ever going to win collective bargaining rights, if we're ever going to have access to the same kinds of legal frameworks that other workers have, we are going to have an organization and set of organizations and a movement to really fight for that. And so that is what we're doing. And so anyone on the way that we set up these locals is like anyone who works on a college or university campus can join. People start paying dues as soon as they're joining, so they're part of building the organization. They're bought into the idea that we need a union, and then we just act like a union. We don't wait for permission from the employer. We don't wait for a new law to pass or some major reforms. We need improvements in people's lives now, and we build campaigns and organize to make that happen.
Yeah, talk to me about how is it that they think that unions are illegal in the context that that they're in. I mean, because I've heard that when I first started doing the show, somebody came up to me I thought unions were illegal just in Alabama at all. Where do you think that misconception comes from?
Well, there's a big long history. But yeah, go for it, Haley. Jump in.
Oh, no, I was just briefly going to say, I don't know specifically where it comes from, except that I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and particularly a lot of lack of transparency. And I think a lack of transparency is intentional, right? And it really benefits employers. I think that's something that UA specifically uses a lot to make sure that folks can organize. I don't know necessarily where folks get it specifically, but I just that it's a context in which employers are really incentivized to make sure that we don't have the right information, and there's not really much to keep them from, either saying things that are misleading or making sure that folks don't get the information that they need. So that's my best guess, but Melanie may have other thoughts.
I think that's really a huge part of it is just misinformation over time, building up for many decades. I think, the fact that laws like right to work laws exist, they exist to undermine unions, right? But they also exist to sow confusion and make it create the impression that nothing is allowed. So a lot of times, like, people are making that connection between right to work and union is illegal. So that's an important part of worker education in general, is just shedding light on what those laws actually are and who they impact and why it doesn't necessarily have to impact you. Or it just changes the way you have to organize. I think, too, there's a lot of other things, like when you get a job at an employer like the University of Alabama, a lot of times they make you sign paperwork. I think the paperwork usually says something like, I will not do anything that is, harms the United States of America. They're trying to make sure that you're not a Soviet spy, I guess, on campus, stealing secrets. So people sign that and think that means that they can't be in a union. And then, in general, there's this whole long history in Alabama, especially famously because of, wonderful writers like Robin Kelly. We know that there have been campaigns of terror against organizing in the South and organizing, particularly organizing across racial lines, across class lines. And so I think that the impact of that over time is that it just gets embedded into people's psyches that this isn't something that we can do. And it's ultimately rooted in fear.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with Jacob Morrison.
My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. Wow, folks, hey, so Haley and Kyle and Melanie, thank y'all for sticking with us. So talk to us about some of the campaigns that y'all have. Well, actually, Melanie, can you talk to us about some of the campaigns that you had as an organizer? Now you're an organizer with UCW, but as like a rank and file student worker, can you talk to us about some of the things that y'all were able to accomplish at University of Tennessee?
Yeah, totally. So we, right around the time that I got involved in the union, we launched this campaign called Tennessee is Not for Sale, which maybe some of your listeners have heard of. It was this 2-year-long saga to prevent the outsourcing of facilities workers on campus. Because United Campus Workers isn't just for student workers, it's for anyone who works on campus. Faculty, staff, grad workers, anyone who gets a paycheck from the university can join. And I believe it was, what is time? 2015? The governor of Tennessee at the time, Bill Haslam, who's the richest governor in the United States at the time, a billionaire, he wanted to outsource facilities workers all across the state to a private company. So those are all the people that clean the buildings, that maintain equipment, all of that kind of stuff. It would have been thousands of workers just given over to a private company, getting them off the state payroll, no more benefits, things like that. And so that would have impacted hundreds and hundreds of our members. And so we launched a campaign to fight back. And we largely defeated that campaign to outsource for everyone all across the state, not just at UT, but also at University of Memphis, at Middle Tennessee State University, at all the different places where we had a presence. We were able to stop that outsourcing from happening. And we did that through a number of different things, a lot of on-campus action, so tons and tons of rallies on campus, going to the legislature. We have a super majority Republican legislature in Tennessee, which also makes people think that it's impossible to get anything done. But sometimes those people really will work with you on certain issues. And so we got a majority of Republicans to sign on to a letter opposing the outsourcing and delivered it to the governor's office. And so through a number of different pressure tactics, we were able to make that happen. And that's one of the most proud accomplishments of my life, honestly, was working on that campaign. And that's really what really got the word out to a lot of other people in the South about what we were doing and what we could accomplish.
Yeah, I think that the power. So I came from a faith tradition that is that has politics that I don't agree with in a lot of ways, but they really place a high value on testimony as something that can invigorate another person's faith, and I think that is a really I think that that's something that I've taken with me as an organizer, because I genuinely do think, and that's why I'm so interested in talking to other people from all across the country that are doing this kind of work, is that I think that that testimony, like what you just did, what you just talked about, being able to hear about workers struggling and sometimes winning, but sometimes losing, but still going through that struggle, and even with losing, realizing their power. It has the ability to activate people, to get people to realize like their worth and their ability to enact change in their lives. And I think that's really so I appreciate that. Kyle and Haley, what was the knowledge of that campaign kind of what got y'all into it, or was it more or hearing about other victories or campaigns that got you into joining the union at UA, or was it more of dissatisfaction with your own conditions and just being motivated in yourself to like fix it?
I know for me, it was definitely a little bit of both. At the time that I started to learn about the union, it was last August. We were coming back to campus, and the union were really the only folks that I was seeing that were organizing around COVID and trying to make sure that folks on campus were safe. And so the Safe Return UA campaign, there was a Facebook page. I reached out and I was in communication with folks from the union about COVID organizing. And so it was definitely a mixture of they were out there doing the work. They were the ones that were putting out the support. And then I was also really dissatisfied with the way that UA was handling it. I don't know if folks know, but we actually ended up being, when we opened last August, essentially the hotspot of the hotspot. We were the worst college in the country when we opened as far as COVID was concerned. And as most people know, we are also one of the worst nations in the world. So it was really bad. And they had attempted to get us to sign this form, this acknowledgement form. And the acknowledgement form, theoretically, they said was just about us acknowledging that there was some level of risk. But there's this language buried in it that sort of stood out to me as a baby law student that said, I voluntarily assumed the risk associated with COVID, essentially. And that really stood out to me. And so that was my first introduction to the union. Was I worked with folks to write an op-ed and get them to change that language. But we're still facing the same conditions, right? Like it still continues, and we're facing probably another August where we're going to go back and be one of the worst campuses in the country. I know that just implemented a mask mandate again, but it's very uncertain how long that's going to last. So essentially, yeah, I would say the campaign was really, really a big deal for me. It's where I found support. It's what brought me into the union. And it continues to be a big deal to me.
Do you think that that's going to be the biggest concern for students going back? Well, sorry, we're about to come up on a break, but when we come back to the break, I want to hear what you think the biggest concern is going to be for student workers as they start to come back to school here in a few weeks, and what y'all are going to be doing to what y'all are planning to do to address that. So really looking forward to hearing some more from Haley and Kyle and Melanie with the United Campus Workers. Stay tuned. All power to the workers. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. We are joined by United Campus Workers, student organizers, and staff organizers, Melanie Barron, Kyle Ashley, and Haley Czarnek. Adam, there was a couple things that you wanted to touch on about the last segment.
For one thing, that I'm glad that Melanie talked a little bit about the Tennessee Not for Sale campaign. That's how I first came across United Campus Workers. I was not familiar with them and actually saw it on labor notes and really impressed with what they were able to do without collective bargaining agreements, without legal rights to strike, and they still pulled it off, and I think that's huge. And those of you who are local here in the Tennessee Valley, you probably are aware that outsourcing and privatization of school support staff is a big problem we have, both at the K-12 level and at the college and university level. So many of the folks cooking food for students, cleaning the hallways and dorm rooms and classrooms, security guards, you name it, many of these folks are outsourced through temp agencies, which means they're not paying into state retirement. They're not benefiting from state health insurance programs or from any sort of due process rights that, may be available, at least at the K-12 and community college level. So I thought that was really important and very much relevant for folks here locally and across the South, across the country. It's a massive trend that we've seen, especially after the Great Recession over a decade ago, is when it really picked up. And something that Haley mentioned that I just wanted to reiterate. She talked about getting involved because she was handed a document by her employer with some sketchy language. Mm-hmm. And I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to really read whatever it is that your boss wants you to sign. Because there's a reason why they want you to sign something. And so, I mean, it's just our habit sometimes to just sign stuff and get it out of our way, knock it off our list. But really, really read through any sort of document that your employer wants you to sign, because you just don't know what you may be signing up for. And believe me, their lawyers will keep a record of it, and it will be busted out if it's convenient for them. So I think that was a great lesson, Haley.
Yeah, and I will add, they essentially talked to press about that once we had started to push back on that language, and they never reached out to me directly, but they told the press, "Oh, it wasn't supposed to be a waiver of any rights. That's not really. I don't know. I haven't talked to legal. I'm not sure that that's what that's supposed to be." I'm like, no, I'm 100% certain that a lawyer has looked at this form that you're making every student and employee sign. Like, I know that that's true.
Oh, yeah.
But it was really interesting how they responded to that. They did eventually change the language, but I never heard from them directly.
Right. Well, that's awesome. And of course, the employer, wherever they can get away with it, they do not want to give a win publicly to the union. They're never going to admit that it was your pressure, especially when we're in a context like Alabama where there aren't any like collective bargaining stuff set up for public employees. They're going to try everything that they can do to keep workers from realizing that they have the power and that they can change things. But I think that the presentation of the facts and the timeline it's pretty obvious what the catalyst was for the change. So Kyle, what do you think the we were talking about the how UA was one of the vectors for transmission last year, and there's some worry about COVID going into this year. Do you feel like that's going to be one of the biggest things on the mind of student workers as they come back to the classroom, or do you think it's going to be some other stuff like pay and benefits and things like that?
Well, I think COVID will be a big one. If you look around state numbers, we're on pace to break the previous record for COVID cases per day. We're at January levels right now. And not to mention that move-in started last week with sororities and Rush, and that's just a prime opportunity for spread. You have parents, you have students from all over the country and all over Alabama. There's also, issues with pay and healthcare. We're starting a campaign which was our first campaign before we had to switch gears because of COVID, about greater access to healthcare for workers around campus, especially like adjunct faculty. But yeah, I mean, there's a tons of things coming down the pipeline, and each one of these things is complicated by COVID.
Right.
Like, yeah. So I would say yes, COVID is probably the biggest thing, but also just the side effects of COVID, like the complications that are brought around with COVID.
What do you think? So, you know, as much as you can say, what are the plans of the UCW down at UA to attack these issues? You know, COVID, the pay, everything. You know, like what's the plan going forward?
So for us, we one of our strongest campaigns originally was Safe Return, and so perhaps there is a little bit of return to that. I think what most faculty workers are really concerned about, though, is like lack of transparency from faculty, especially regarding to forms of classes. Like there's in-person classes, but there is kind of like this notion going around that you should be ready just in case you have to switch to a visual format. But that takes a lot of work, a lot of labor, a lot of effort.
Right.
And so I guess the first steps is just demanding kind of transparency on what the semester is intended to look like, and what exactly is expected, and what they want, and whether that is feasible or fair to workers around campus.
Yeah, Adam, I think you had a question for them about that, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to see if you guys, and whoever feels best to answer this, go ahead. But I just wanted to learn a little bit more about UCW in Alabama. Obviously, we know you guys are working hard in Tuscaloosa at the University of Alabama, but do y'all, you know, to the extent you feel comfortable sharing, do y'all have a presence in other places in Alabama, other colleges and universities? And just, you know, kind of tell us a little bit about what's UCW's plans moving forward to really build worker power here in the state of Alabama.
I'm happy to jump in here. So yeah, we have active committees at UI Tuscaloosa and now also at Auburn University. And at Auburn University, the first campaign there is really a push for $15 an hour. And so we're talking to as many staff and other workers on campus we're launching a postcard campaign, so we're working to get a majority of staff to sign on to a pledge card that says they support $15 an hour, and we'll be delivering that to the administration once we hit that target. So just organizing around that. We have a couple of committees in development that are not yet public at different universities in Alabama. So if you're listening and you think, wow, I would love to have a union on my campus, we want to talk to you. And the way to really get started is to reach out and talk, but also start thinking about who are the other coworkers that you know that would be down to do something like this, and start building a committee. That's where all this comes from, is like just workers building up committees and growing those committees as much as you can, starting with personal networks and then going through and getting really systematic about going bigger once you've got your feet underneath you. So that's what we're working on in several different places, and that's what we've got active in public in Tuscaloosa and Auburn right now.
When we talk to other union organizers, that's one of the first things that they say as well is like when presented with like, I want to start a union, what do I need to do? What are the first steps? The first step is always, talk to your coworkers. And that's, that's a pretty kind of basic thing, but that it really is important to be connected to your fellow workers, to understand their needs and concerns and what is going to motivate them, maybe what's not going to motivate them, and try to answer their needs in conjunction with answering your own needs as a worker organizer, and as an external organizer. Obviously, it's important to center the needs of the actual folks that you're trying to organize, and so that's always good advice. That's always good when I hear folks reiterate that, and that kind of beats in that. Yeah, this is an important thing. That that having the conversations, having those relationships. You can't have a union without it.
Yeah, I think that's just so exciting to hear that. There's such a real need for organizing on college and university campuses here in Alabama. And we have a whole lot right here in our FM listening area. UAH, Alabama A&M, Drake State, Calhoun Community College, University of North Alabama. There are thousands of workers, both professors and other teachers and other support staff workers who really, really could benefit from some organizing. They need that, and I think it's really exciting to hear that United Campus Workers is here in Alabama. They are doing some good work and building the program, so that's awesome.
Yep. Melanie, to wrap us up, where can people find UCW?
So we are on social media, obviously, so Facebook, Twitter, UCW-AL, and then you can go to UCW-AL.org. You can also learn more about United Campus Workers across the country by visiting UnitedCampusWorkers.org.
Thanks, Melanie.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
All workers deserve fair wages, affordable health care, and a retirement plan that enables them to retire with dignity. All workers deserve to have a say about the terms and conditions of their employment, not just the bosses. With the machinist union's over 600,000 members having our back, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama has been serving workers' interests for over 20 years. Our members have the best health insurance in the area with zero deductible plans. We set the bar for pay in the area with over $40 an hour rates, consistently averaging the highest non-college degree jobs in North Alabama with some of the best retirement plans in the industry. We can do the same for you. Together, we remain united, raising our voices to ensure justice on the job and service in the community. The Machinist Union is a true Southern union founded in Atlanta in 1888. We have been serving members' needs for 132 years. The longevity of our union proves our dedication and loyalty to the working class. The Machinist Union isn't just for machinists. We represent workers in government, healthcare, auto workers, aerospace workers, transportation workers, the defense industry, and woodworking. Our members even build the iconic Harley-Davidson motorcycles. If you're ready to get serious about better benefits and wages, if you want to have a voice in your workplace with over 600,000 members to back you up, call or email us today at 256-286-3704 or organize at IAMAW44.org.
If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week and get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. If you missed part of the show and you want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we also clip segments and release them throughout the week. We upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, you can go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. And we've got a website where you can buy our stickers. We are all out of hats now, so you can still go and buy our stickers though at thevalleylaborreport.org. And we want to do a T-shirt drop here in the future, and we think we like the idea of doing some kind of graphic tee. With some sort of like labor theme. So if you have any ideas about that, then, let us know. Send us a DM on Twitter or Facebook, whatever you think would look cool. And if we get any cool ideas, we want to commission a local artist to do that for us. And so let us know. We are open to ideas. I've got at least one cool idea that we're bouncing around right now already. So, but more are always welcome. And finally, if you appreciate our work and you want to help us stay on the air, then the best thing that you can do is throw us a few dollars a month on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. As you can imagine, businesses don't line up to advertise on a Union Talk radio show, so your support really does help us out.